All right, and welcome back. Tonight we are definitely going to range a little from a lot of the politics and religion that we normally do. This is my friend James, and we're going to discuss sci-fi and especially Star Wars. So, James, why don't you introduce yourself a little?
My name is James Treefry. I am a alumni of UWM. Me and Eric met at UWM campus on the bridge, as we like to call it. It's the bridge between the Union and I don't even know what that building is. What's that building called? Like the
The
engineering.
Lubar and Entrepreneurship
Yeah,
Center. It's
yeah,
the one
yeah,
that's there now.
yeah. Okay, yeah, that then. So yeah, we've been talking for a while, and now I'm excited to get on this podcast and talk about my favorite movie franchise of all time.
Yep. And it's if people are familiar with Star Wars, it's rare that they don't have strong feelings about it. So it's so iconic, basically.
I mean, it's so polarizing. It's the most polarizing TV movie franchise that I would say has ever existed. The most loved, the most hated. I mean, you name it. You know, you say Star Wars, and people almost have endless words to say. It's fascinating.
And and there's controversy
Of
because
course. Why
Star,
would there not? Why would there not be?
which is ironic because it's not even like the original six were not intended to be political, as we'll no doubt go into later, but they ended up creating, at least the prequels ended up creating a lot of controversy that we'll get into because we're both fans of the prequels. And if that's an unpopular opinion, well, give us a shot to change your mind on it.
Please do. I mean, seriously, they're the most criticized movies that I've ever come across, and a lot of it is undue, in my humble opinion. The prequels have been, my favorite three movie franchise that's come out in the last 30 years. I grew up with them when I was getting into Star Wars, was right around when episodes 2 and 3 were coming out. So, ever since my childhood, they've really been some of the main driving forces of my entertainment. I've watched all of the cartoon shows. I played all the video games that I could get my hands on. So, Star Wars is as big a part of my childhood as any sport that I played or watched.
And I should mention here, I'm actually more of a Trekkie myself. I'm more of a Star Trek fan, but I've encountered Star Wars enough, and I connected very much with the story and with the characters. And so I may be bringing in some occasional compare and contrast with Trek here as well, because those are the two primary sci-fi franchises basically of all time. So all right. Let's see here. Any other introductory thoughts maybe we kind of laid out?
I'm ready. I'm ready to get going. Let's see what you got for me.
All right. So, let's just maybe talk a bit about the the significance of Star Wars. Why does Star Wars matter? Why is it so popular, do you think?
Well, I think the first thing that I would point to popularity is the characters and the significance of the characters. There's television shows and movies that are heavily centered around characters. There's television shows that are heavily centered around themes or things that are going on. But Star Wars kind of brings it all together with characters, with sci-fi, with story arc, and it was something that was new when it was coming out. Nowadays it feels like there's some new sci-fi thing coming out with all these streaming services, Netflix, Hulu. There's something new coming out all the time. So back when Star Wars was just starting with 4, 5, and 6, it was something people hadn't seen, and it captivated audiences. And there's some things that I've watched where George Lucas didn't even expect people to like it as much as he did. It was kind of an idea that was just kind of loosely thrown out there, and now it's changed the world. It's changed how people watch movies, how people view movies. Harrison Ford, he was a carpenter at what, 30 years old. I mean, that if that's not indicative enough about where this came from. This it's probably the most It's got to be the TV franchise, the movie franchise that's changed the world the most.
And I would say honestly, between Star Wars and Star Trek, Star Wars is the movie franchise, and Star Trek is the TV franchise that's become most iconic. And they're very different actually, and I think that's significant because Star Trek from the beginning was very much into social commentary and politics. The original series was born in the middle of the civil rights era. And for example, Gene Roddenberry was very bold, and he had William Shatner and what was her name? Anyways, the woman that played Uhura, the communications officer, they had a romance and they kissed on screen, which in 1967 that was literally unheard of. That had never happened before, and it was bold and it worked. And Trek has continued that tradition ever since. And it seems like Star Wars, it's not that it lacks a worldview, but it's more meant to carry you away like Lord of the Rings to, well, not to be hokey here, but to a
Yeah.
galaxy far, far away and long ago.
Well, I think a big reason for that is, and George Lucas has said this a number of times, that Star Wars is for kids. Star Wars, through and through, is a kids show. I'll never forget when I first got a glimpse of Star Wars. I walked into my parents' bedroom. My dad had something on the television. When I look at what's on the screen, it's the Tusken Raider beating the crap out of Luke, and I'm thinking, I want to watch this. And I watched episode 4 a few days later with my dad, and sooner than later, I was seeing the prequels. Episode 3 was on the verge of coming out. So it's a movie franchise that captivates the audience of children. And I haven't quite got that same vibe with Star Trek. I feel like Star Trek has a lot older of an audience, and maybe I'm misreading that. It's been a while since I've visited the Star Trek franchise, but that's kind of the vibe that I've gotten from
Trek has two halves, one of which is very based on science, philosophy, and religion, and the other half is more like Star Wars, where it's wars and conflicts between alien races in this fictional universe. But it's more deliberately rooted in what the writers project to be our universe, like Earth is there, and we're in our galaxy. And even the action adventure side of it will oftentimes toy with themes like prejudice. And I just watched an episode of Strange New Worlds, the newest series, last night, and my goodness, it was so dark. It was wonderful. It was fantastic. But I would never show this to a kid. It was like watching Apocalypse Now combined with some of the graphic content of like a modern war movie, and it ended in a really really twisted way.
it. Man, I'll have to check that out. I've really fallen out of touch with the Star Trek movies and shows. I think the last one I saw might have been that the second of those movies with I forget the actor's name that played Kirk in the movies.
Oh, Chris Pine.
Yeah. I watched the second one that brought in Khan. I liked that movie a lot, actually, and it's man, I have fallen out of touch with Star Trek. But honestly, the way you're talking, I want to get back on that a little bit because it really is a great show. All the characters are great. The story arc is great. The dialogue is always supreme. So I would love to get back into that.
Well, and it does kind of bridge us back into, because without spoiling this for anyone who might want to see it, the again the ending of this last episode was comparable to Apocalypse Now. If our audience members have seen that most famous of all Vietnam War movies, which was an encapsulation of the twistedness of war and the way that it warps human beings to such a degree that good and evil become very blurred, and people that you think are the good guys end up doing very bad things, but because of what they've been through, you can't necessarily say that what they did was entirely unjustified, even if it was kind of objectively and rationally wrong. and then the supposed villains oftentimes they're also fall in this gray category